I'm really excited to have you guys on the platform. Thank you too. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. Yes.
Okay, so we can get straight into it. So I know I really wasn't familiar with Cassandra, so nice to meet you.
Hey, yeah,
Um,
I haven't met you. Nice to meet you.
so my name is Donald on Fulton. I'm a clinical research project manager at Rowan University.
Yes, and Keisha, we aren't familiar with each other because we didn't work together in person, but we're getting to know each other through this process, which is fantastic. But me and Casey, well, I call her Casey. She was like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
big sibling to me when I was in the IMSD program at
Yeah.
MUSC. So um, I'll just give just a little brief background, especially for other viewers when they see it. But I'm a PhD candidate at the Medical University of South Carolina. Right now, I'm looking to finish my PhD this year, so I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
Very excited. So, thank you guys for being here on the platform to discuss how you got into like competitive postdocs and how the
Yeah.
postdoc journey has been for you guys. I know this is going to be such a learning topic for me as a PhD candidate, and I'm sure it will be for you too.
Yes, because I'll be starting my PhD this year. So
Okay, yeah.
we're passing the passing it off to one another, like passing the task. So it'll be my turn, and just learning about postdoc and everything will just help me a mile so ahead of the road. So I thank you too,
Cool,
because
yeah.
we're just excited to, discuss everything. So
Yes, so I think this is going to be a great chance for people to learn about IMSD and all these different AHA fellowships, all these different opportunities that you guys have delved into during the process. So, the first thing we want to dive into, so I guess we'll start with Keisha first on this question and then Casey. So we'll go. So the first question is that we wanted you guys to give a brief introduction of yourselves and include a little bit about your educational background.
Okay. Y'all can hear me okay, right? Okay. So I have a bachelor's in science in molecular and cell biology from Texas A&M University in College Station. Um, in between then, I actually worked as a high school teacher. I had taught physics and chemistry to high schoolers. I love the kids and all of that, but I went back to do more schooling and I completed basically a post-baccalaureate in clinical lab sciences. So basically, I was like a laboratorian of the hospital, which was very, very cool. During that time, I started to look into more graduate related work. And I eventually went to Vanderbilt and I got a doctorate of philosophy in cancer biology over there. Um, so since then, I've done other sort of rotations and other postdocs as well. So I've worked back in the hospital again because that was sort of, I guess, the journey where you get the PhD and then you go on to become sort of a clinical person in the hospital. But I even transitioned back. So now I work basically at UNC, University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Um, and I guess to sum up sort of the work that I do, I study drug dynamics in cancer cells. And I also, I guess, study the different receptors that line cells. So EGFR, BRAF, and now the TAMs, which are tyroaxyl and myrrh.
Yeah, that's I'm excited for the viewers because I think we went on the same like on paper journey in terms of, like the degrees we got, but I can see already that they're going to get some different perspectives because yeah, we've had our own journeys. I got my bachelor's of science in biomedical engineering from Worcester Polytechnic Institute. So I kind of took the traditional route of like immediately after high school, I went and got my undergraduate degree. But then after that, I didn't make a quick transition into graduate school. I actually, during my undergrad, I was, working some science jobs, some non-science jobs, just to make some money. But then towards the end of my undergrad, I started working in industry as a polymer R&D intern that turned into a full-time position. So I had that industry experience. I graduated with my biomedical engineering degree, but I kind of just want to get a taste for some non-industry experience to see if I would like academia. I had been interacting with some of the PhD students at WPI, and I thought I really appreciated their mentorship, and I just thought that I would like that kind of more one-on-one aspect of academia mentorship than what I experienced in industry. So I applied to the Medical University of South Carolina, where Mia and I met, and I became a research specialist, which is basically a technician there. And I worked in that position for about almost 4 years. And it really dictated kind of, this is getting into maybe a future question, but I really appreciated my gap time there where I could figure stuff out. So I had that gap. And then I applied to PhD programs. Since I was working in academia, I decided I liked it and wanted to get a PhD. And I applied to a lot of different places, but I ended up staying at MUSC. I just really liked the community, and I had interviewed with some people there that I liked, so I stayed there. My PhD took about 4 years. It was in aortic valve targeted mass spectrometry approaches. So it's kind of like half biology of what's going on with pediatric congenital aortic valve stenosis. And then specifically in the fibrosis of that, so a lot of work on collagen, and then also in the mass spectrometry technology development side, because collagen is actually a really difficult protein to probe, and also working on post-translational modifications. So that's what my PhD was in. And then, yeah, I decided to stay in academia. I really liked mentoring. I liked working with the other students. I love the collaborative aspect. And I applied for a lot of different postdocs. Again, a lot of cold emails, a lot of trying to network. And I'm sure we'll get into what that process is like. But I eventually ended up at Harvard Medical School for my postdoc, which is where I am now in my 3rd year. So I stayed in the same biology. I'm still working in aortic valve calcification, but I've kind of moved on to other omic technology, so transcriptomic, epigenomics, things like that, and also still some mass spec method development too. So yeah, that's kind of my trajectory so far.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate both sides of the perspectives that we have here. And I think it's amazing too, just Keisha had her teaching experience, and then Casey, you had this bridge between academia and industry work that you've done. So with all these experiences that you guys have had, so that just leads us to our next question. So why did you feel like, what motivated you to pursue a postdoc position, and how did you know that that was right for you? Because at least for me as a PhD candidate, I'm still currently weighing out the options. So like, what really made it stand out for you to feel like it was worth it? And we could start with Keisha again.
Yeah, I think for me, I was following sort of the common trajectory is like if you're going to become sort of a scientific professor, then you do a postdoc. I mean, it does have to be at least one, but all of the other professors I see, they at least did a postdoc somewhere for, a couple of years. So I know for me, I was sort of thinking that that's what I wanted to do. But also too, I would think if you're still curious about like if you're not sure if you want to do industry or something else, I mean, so long as you're sort of still interested in sort of this love for knowledge and learning, I think then a postdoc will still be a good route. You can, I think, go on to just work directly in industry, and there are some places actually where, you can do sort of a postdoc type of job in industry actually. But I would say overall, I mean, so long as you're sort of still interested and still sort of thinking about how you're trying to shape your future, then I would still consider a postdoc. I mean, for me, I've been trying, I don't know if it'll happen yet because it is kind of hard. I will say it's kind of difficult. But if you're wanting to become a professor who at least runs a laboratory part, well, then you will want to consider doing a postdoc, at least a short postdoc, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like it's kind of rooted in the foundation of like, do you love to learn? Because at least I know my industry experience wasn't at the PhD level, so I'm sure it's different. But I found that I had less freedom over my scientific path when I was in industry. And that's kind of one thing I really loved about my PhD that I wanted to continue on is if I just got some crazy idea of something I wanted to test, like as long as it wasn't out there in terms of the budget or the timeline, like I was just really encouraged to kind of follow my love and my passion for my scientific interests. And I'm sure that happens in industry as well, but at least I didn't have that personal experience. I felt like it was more being dictated from the top down. But again, that could have been based off of my level. But I also would recommend, like, if you want to try and get a feel for if you think you'll like academia, if a postdoc and that kind of traditional academic route towards tenure track professorship is suitable for you, get a taste of what your life would be like as a professor. So get mentoring opportunities. Like I really love one-on-one mentoring. And yeah, like when I'm having a bad science day, and then now I have the opportunity to work with more students than I did in my PhD, but those kids, they're not kids, they're adults, but those students revitalized my love for science, you know? I'm having a bad day, then I meet with them for an hour and I see, I don't know, when you're younger, you just like, the love is still there and it's harder to squash. And then that just kind of reinvigorates like, oh yeah, I love it too. I forgot sometimes it's hard. So get that mentorship in. Also, I had the opportunity during my PhD to write a lot of grants. I wrote a T32. I had to write an AHA pre-doctoral. I also wrote 2 different F31s because my first one was not discussed, so I had to change it and resubmit it. So then I found during that process that I really love grant writing, and now that I'm working in my PhD, I'm loving the bench less, but I'm loving grant writing more. And eventually, as a professor, that's more and more of your job. So if you can kind of see that trajectory of something you want to wean down on the bench and wean up on, if that's a term, wean up on the grant writing, then yeah, I think if all those things sound good to you, then I think a postdoc would be good. Yeah.
So, weaned up.
Wean up.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a term.
That's so funny.
So, how did you decide which research institution was right for you while doing your postdoc? I know that for example, Keisha, I know you can speak to different postdoc experience, and I know that Casey, this is your only postdoc, and I'm assuming you had other opportunities to get a postdoc. So I kind of want you guys to speak more to that.
Yeah, I will say the location and the place actually, I think, really dictated where. So as he's saying, like, for instance, I worked in Kentucky in a hospital. I then moved back down to Texas. I'm from Texas, actually. And then I worked in a small institute. Then I moved over to a bigger institute. Then I moved over to North Carolina. So I've been to a good number of places. But I think the location and the type of institute really, I think, dictated the best places. Because to be honest, the 2 best places were UT Southwestern and UNC. And they're big places that are similar to Vanderbilt, because that's where I had trained and that's where I had, that was sort of the field that I liked and that I wanted. At a large place like that, they offer a lot of seminars, they offer a lot of different opportunities for you to learn and explore. One of the places, I mean, I won't mention the name, people may be able to figure it out, but it was a very, very small institute, less than 100 postdocs total. And over there, I mean, they didn't offer that type of programming. So I felt very lost over there. And for me, I think the location really played a large role. I mean, of course, you also pick a good, science or related topic, and there are other factors, but I think being at a place that you love is important and matters. There are some people, some of my friends who will never live, say, in New York or California because they think those places are just too expensive. And so you have to factor in, sort of the place as to where you're wanting to live, I would say.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Keisha, because I feel like work-life balance is something that's like, oh, you want to live in this place. Maybe, your family's from around here. Don't prioritize that. If you can go off to California, even though you cannot see yourself there, like you need to be in California, like, no, we're human beings. Like our work is our work and we love it. But like, yeah, I totally agree. Like you need to prioritize location. Either that's the size of the city you want to live in, if it's close to family. Like for me, I was interviewing at some places in the Midwest, at Medical College of Wisconsin and some other places there. I'd never lived there before, but I just got along really well with the PI through like networking, and I liked her research. So that was kind of driving me to there. But then I was also interviewing primarily up here. So I had two labs at Harvard that I was kind of deciding between, and both had similar resources. Harvard obviously has the name backing it, but Medical College of Wisconsin also for like that field, I'm in heart valve disease and there's a really big heart valve community there. So amongst heart valve biologists, it's a big deal to go there as well. So yeah, like you got to consider your science, you got to consider your location. Kind of what drove it home for me were a couple things of why I chose this one. One was resources. So, I was at the Proteomics Center at MUSC in my PhD. I knew I wanted to continue in mass spectrometry, but I didn't want to do the exact same thing, but I knew I wanted to keep building my mass spec skills. So I didn't want to be the kind of person where I was submitting samples to a core. Like I wanted access to an instrument that I could play with and manipulate, because technology is a big thing for me. And that's what I have here. Like we are our own core facility, basically. I also really wanted maintenance of like my accessibility to clinical samples. So I have a joint appointment with Brigham and Women's Hospital where our lab gets, strong collaborations with cardiovascular surgeons so we can get that constant influx of human clinical cohorts. That was also important to me. And then on the non-science side of things, when I was looking, my mom actually got diagnosed with breast cancer that year, and she's doing well now, but at the time we didn't really know what was going to go on. And I grew up in New England. So yeah, location was definitely a big thing for me versus the two. I wanted to be closer to family. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that she's doing better now. I'm very
Yeah,
thankful
thanks
for
for
that.
sharing that, Casey.
So what are some
Yeah,
tips?
that's the reality is like, sometimes like say maybe my science opportunity up here closer to my mom wasn't as, it didn't check those boxes. I just think you shouldn't beat yourself up about prioritizing family. I feel like that's a big thing in academia of like, oh, family should be in the back burner and science needs to be number one, but that's not always the case. It's great if everything can align, but sometimes you got to prioritize your family. And I think that's really important.
Well, I'm glad that you touched on that piece. It definitely leads to our next question of, what are some tips that you would give for people who are currently looking for postdoctoral positions?
Or getting ready to graduate and, transition. So what are some tips you guys have for those people that are getting pumped and ready to transition?
I would say start a bit early if you can. I mean, sometimes you can't, but if you can, I mean, even 12 months before graduation, even, I mean, you can start talking to PIs, principal investigators, early. One of the things I talked to actually someone a few years ago as I was trying to get advice from him. He had just transitioned on to start a faculty position. And, he was like, why don't you look at some of the papers that you like and actually, that's doing the science that you want to do and sort of find that person to sort of talk to and see, well, can you work with that person? And actually I did that, and that actually led to one of my jobs actually at UT Southwestern. So that is also a possibility where, if someone is doing something, they actually use the mass spec, like Casey, but if someone's doing some science that you really like and you're really passionate about, you can actually try to talk to them. You can try to talk to them at conferences and other places, but for me, I guess maybe I'm not that shy. I just simply email them. I simply email and ask them. I would also, I guess, for some people in the audience, if they're African American or Latino, Native American, you can pay your salary in different ways, right? And sometimes when you're talking to some of these people, you should also mention that. It's like, hey, if they have a big PR or U grant, and you can pay your salary on that with a diversity supplement. I mean, so sort of having these conversations early, because sometimes it takes a while, actually, even though, you put in the application, but we need to be thinking about this 6 or 8, 9 months early in advance in order to pay your salary. So those are some of the things that I would suggest. I mean, if you're looking for a postdoc, to start talking to people very broadly.
Yeah, definitely start early. I wish I started earlier. It all worked out, but yeah, I was pretty stressed at the end when I didn't have something locked down. But yeah, I think like the other advice that I would give, just kind of to expand upon like how to start early and start connecting. Everybody says it, but like networking, if you have the opportunity to travel to conferences, that's great. Start looking in again early to travel awards for conferences that you might want to go to. Usually people release the programs so you can see like, hey, maybe like a plenary speaker at some conference I'm going to is either the PI that I want to work for or is connected to the PI I want to work for, then yeah, make your way to that conference. That's literally how I got my postdoc here, is I saw the previous mentor of my current PI who I knew I wanted to work for was giving a talk. But my current PI, wasn't going to give any talk. So it's like, okay, how do I connect her with her? Because I haven't met her yet at a conference and I can't bump into her. I don't see that she's going to be talking anywhere that I'm going. So I just kind of found that second degree of connection and went to her mentor. So that way, when you're sending these emails, it's not a cold email. You can CC somebody that they know, and then they're more likely to respond to you. I certainly did send cold emails and got some responses, but I'll say the ones that I could CC somebody on, everybody got back to me. Even if it was at a no, they at least responded, where the cold emails I would get sometimes no responses. Yeah, and then if you can't travel to network, then potentially, I didn't do this, but I've heard a lot of success stories this way of inviting your potential future PI to come give a talk at your university. Like maybe your PI or your department can host them to give a seminar, especially, for us, Mia, we were in Charleston, South Carolina. Who doesn't want to come, give a talk in Charleston and have a little beach vacation? So, invite them to give a talk. That way you can have more of a one-on-one, almost like a low pressure pre-interview, so that you can say, hey, by the way, I'm looking for a postdoc while you're here. Let's chat about it. So yeah, networking and starting early for sure.
Thanks, ladies. Those were some very excellent points you made. Like, I'm glad you said started early, because I literally just said to myself, I need to go ahead and start, especially if I'm thinking I'm gonna be defending in the fall. So I definitely need to get buckled down now. But so our next question, I think it'll be great because we do have people from MUSC who came out tonight, and so they know about the culture of MUSC. And so just in general, how was it for you to being able to balance your time, as a postdoc versus as a graduate student? Because I'm sure those are like two different worlds. So can you guys kind of give some perspective on how that is for you?
Okay, well, I don't think they're two different worlds. I feel like, I guess, as a postdoc, I'd still sort of work a lot. But actually, I haven't said, I actually got sick during my time as a postdoc. And, afterwards, becoming physically disabled, it's sort of like, I need to try to work just regular 9 hours a day, basically. I still do the same types of planning that I did as a grad student. I plan out what experiments per week, sometimes called like a Sunday meeting or whatever, but it's, I plan out my weeks. And, you can also add other types of, I guess, ways of planning out the time. But I think it's very similar. I mean, I don't know, maybe Casey will say something different, but I think it's very similar. I try to plan out my time as best as I can. There are some artificial intelligence tools that you can use that help you sort of, for instance, I think one of them is called Goblin Tools, which divides up the day. There's one for, I guess, structuring your literature searches. I think it's called Research Rabbit. But, I'm finding out about a lot of these things. I haven't really gotten into using them, but there are definite ways that you can manage your time. But it is, I think, kind of similar to a grad student's time.
I love that you brought up the AI tools because I just got into these. I was getting targeted advertisements for motion. Um, and then I was like, okay, I'll do the free trial. I am obsessed with it because what it's done for me, and sorry, this is a little side note from your question, me, I'll get back to it. But what it's done for me is helped so much with my work-life balance because what I found that I would do is I would write a to-do list on Monday, like you said, your Sunday planning for the week. And I was never so good at accurately guessing how much time something would take me. I would write this long to-do list and set all these expectations for myself for Friday. And then without saying, okay, this is going to take 2 hours, this is going to take 1 hour, something like that, I wouldn't do that. I would just write a list. And then by Friday, I would get half my list done and like every week feel like a failure because I didn't do my to-do list. But then these AI apps like make you bank out how much time something's going to take you and then fills your Monday through Friday. And then you set your working hours and then you're like, oh, even if I was 100% efficient, it's physically impossible for me to do my to-do list. So it helps you reframe your own mind so that you feel less of a failure. So anyway, I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but I love that app. I recommend it to everybody now. Okay, so work-life balance is very important. I wouldn't say that my postdoc is very similar to my PhD. I mean, both were hard, but I think my mentor in my PhD was really brutally honest with me. And she was like, if you think you're busy now, just wait to your postdoc. And I'm sure if I talk to her now, she's like, you think you're busy now, just wait for your professorship. I think a bit of that is true. But the difference is you're primed to handle it. Like I could not do now what in my first year PhD, like in my current to-do list. Impossible both on a technical level, but also in terms of time management, all these things I couldn't do it. I kind of describe my postdoc as doing like 10 PhDs concurrently. I have way more projects going on that I have to sort out, but I am primed to do it better having done a PhD. I understand experimental design. I'm more efficient. Yeah, but in terms of non-science tasks, I personally just have a lot more of them. I have some like teaching things that I need to do. I'm mentoring a lot of students one-on-one. We get like sabbatical med students as well as graduate students and undergrad students. So I have like the student load as well. I'm writing a lot more grants or assisting with other PI's grants. So a lot more writing and yeah, a lot more manuscript publications. Like I don't know how other people's PhDs were structured, but I wasn't really co-author during my PhD. The only ones I focused on were my first author papers. So now I have a lot more co-authors and collaborations than I did. So it's been a lesson in how to manage your time in terms of like what you want to get done in your postdoc and what are the expectations in terms of collaborations from your PI. So yeah, for me, it feels hectic, but also I can handle it now because I've been trained. Yeah.
That's great perspectives from both of you, like the different similarities and differences that you both shared. So, our final question that we have for you guys tonight is what skills have you developed during your postdoc, and how has that prepared you for the next phase of your career, which is tenure professorship? We're going to speak in the atmosphere.
It could be a professorship or it could be something else. I mean, to be quite honest and be fair, I think I'm learning there are different ways to where I can reach other Black and Latino people, and I don't have to necessarily be a professor. I mean, of course, I'm learning great skills. I've learned stuff with the mass spec, crystallization. I actually work in a protein crystallography lab now. So I learned great scientific skills, but I'm also learning more about, just other ways that I can affect people, if that makes sense. Where, I was a classroom teacher beforehand and I loved teaching the kids, and especially, I'll say this quite honestly. I mean, many of my kids, they didn't have good math skills or science skills. So then they would come over and, they would feel very stressed. And so having them be able to go through those things and sort of seeing that excitement, that's great. So I'm learning that, perhaps I can, do something else, or I can sort of be sort of a scientist and teacher together. I mean, they don't try to like, I guess, advertise for that type of job, but that's kind of the job that I want now, where I can have a small laboratory, but also teach people on the side. And then also, of course, continue to do the advocacy and diversity work that I've been trying to do. Um, But I think that overall, I mean, you will learn something great, I think, in any postdoc. So I don't know, I'll stop there because I see it's 6:31. But
Oh, that was beautiful, Keisha. My bad. I had to kind of step in real quick, but that was beautiful, Keisha. Continue doing the great work that you're doing, impacting people of color, especially Black and Latino communities. So I love that. Thank you so much. And the floor is yours, Casey. My bad.
No, yeah. So for what I've learned in my postdoc, like, of course, there was a whole set of scientific goals I set out of like, I need to fill these gaps in my knowledge. And I won't go into that just because that's going to be unique for everybody in terms of the nitty-gritty details. But yeah, before you start, map out what you want your future science to be. And of course, you're going to have gaps at the end of your PhD and try and find a lab that can fill those gaps. And yeah, I think I've learned that in terms of science. But in terms of not science, I think I've gotten a lot better at saying no. Um, and mainly because, like I mentioned, our lab is highly collaborative. At the beginning, I'd get called into my mentor's office of like, we got another one. Okay, project number 7. How are we going to fit this in? I'd be like, yeah, okay, opportunities. Great. Thank you so much. And then a year and a half in, I got like completely burnt out and overwhelmed, and it was my own fault. I said yes to everything. So yeah, just learning to stick up for yourself and say no, and knowing what your bandwidth is. I think that was something I really had to learn while I was here. And then also like how to manage people. I didn't have undergrads really. Like me and MUSC doesn't have an undergraduate community, and maybe you got some summer students, but this is the first time I had like long-term students directly under me. And technically they're under my PI, but my PI is a director of a center and doesn't have a lot of one-on-one time. So I would be responsible for their day-to-day and management and keeping them on track. And yeah, it was just a good taste of what it's like to manage people and manage students, and sometimes like disciplining, reprimanding, right? Like all these things that go on with students, and of course, encouraging and the positive side of that too, and how to maintain their love for science and all of that. So I think that's something I only learned recently in my postdoc. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know that it's not many graduate programs that you come across that don't have like an undergrad. So to like MUSC being MUSC, like that's very like specific to the culture. Like for people that's not really into teacher, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to teach anything. I'm not in a nursing college. But then it's like, oh, now I'm really over people and I haven't had that, interaction to do that. So I think that was pretty cool that you shared that. I really appreciate that both of y'all came out. That was amazing.
Yeah, you two share some really wonderful insight. Like, I feel like I learned a lot, especially some tools that I can take with me when transitioning to finish my PhD and figuring out my career. So, we want to also thank, the people who will be watching and are currently watching. And thank you guys for just coming out and sharing and pouring out your knowledge. Like, it means the world to us. I know in the next couple weeks, so February 22nd, we'll have our next session, and it'll be about PharmD and industry fellowship. So we're really excited about that. Thank you, ladies, again. We really appreciate it. You guys were so fantastic.
Thank you so much. I think you guys have curated such a useful tool with Scholarly Scouts. I've been following y'all on social media, and yeah, I just think this is really great that you're curating all this knowledge for people. I think it's so useful, and I wish that I had y'all when I was kind of in those early stages. So thanks for this resource.
yes, thank you very much too. I mean, I started following y'all as well. I followed y'all on Twitter, I think, and also LinkedIn. So yes, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me too.
Yes, and thank you, Christina. She's from MUSC. We took a class together, so I noticed Christina came today. So thank you so much for coming today. We're really excited just to continue building the knowledge, just sharing, connecting. Um, However, I really hope this continues to establish more connections for people in the future. And we wish you the best of luck, both of you, in your journeys, in your careers. I know you guys are going to impact so many lives.
Yeah,
Thank
y'all too. And good luck with your application to PhD, and Mia for going to the off to your postdoc or whatever your next step is. Yeah, you guys are going to be great. So
Mhm.
Thank you, ladies. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.